Hey everybody, it's KennedyHawk from the MCM team. We are back doing our hero primers and deck building series on the MCM YouTube channel. I am super excited to talk to you about the X-Men that are finally here in Marvel Champions. So we're going to kick off with the one, the only, Peter Rasputin, aka Colossus. And he is probably, if I had to rank the four heroes that are out so far, the four X-Men heroes, the only ones that are left, Colossus, Shadowcat, Phoenix, and Cyclops, he would come in at number 2. So not that far off from pretty dang good. So let's get underway talking all about Colossus, his hero kit, and some of his aspect deck building hooks. I put out a survey to a bunch of our patrons and some other people that watch the show and the channel about what we could do to make these hero primers a little more useful, especially because I want to cover some of the newer heroes. I want to talk about the heroes that I've been playing recently, which is Colossus and Cyclops a lot. So what we're going to do is in the comments, I'm going to put a link to a marvelcdb deck that I have really enjoyed. And most of them are by community members, not me. I do have a lot of time to do deck building again, but I've really been enjoying playing other people's decks and finding out why they made the choices they made. So we're going to highlight some of those in the comments. So if you check those out in the comments, be sure to click on them, go to marvelcdb, and leave a comment for that deck building author, because I think they would really appreciate knowing that other people are trying out their decks. That's part of the fun of Marvel Champions. Alright, so let's get underway talking all about Colossus. So let's talk about his identity cards really quick. Pyotr Rasputin has a hand size of 6, hit points of 14, a setup ability, search your deck for a copy of Organic Steel and add it to your hand, and Aspiring Artist. Response, after you change to this form, shuffle a Colossus card from your discard pile into your deck. So very similar to Miles, when you flip down, you're going to be able to shuffle one of your best cards back into your deck, seeding your deck to be even better. Hand size is 6, that's pretty good. And then in Colossus, hero form, we have 1 thwart, 2 attack, 2 defense. Surprising at the 2 defense when I first saw this, but then I read his ability. So he has the X-Men trait. Colossus can have 1 additional tough status card. So normally you can only have 1 tough status card. Colossus can have 2. That means he can soak 2 attacks before he starts taking damage. That also means he has to be very careful with his tough cards, because a lot of his abilities are going to trigger off those tough cards. But luckily, he gets a free one. So Steel Skin, after you change to this form, give Colossus a tough status card. That's the same thing as Perseverance from Protection, which means you're getting like a 2 resource discount every time you flip up, which is pretty good. So he's got a hand size of 4, which is a lot smaller than a typical hero, right? The 4 to 5 hand size is a big jump, but I really like the 6-4 split, just like She-Hulk in the Marvel Champions core set. I think 6-4 gives you really good incentive to flip back and forth, while also like making it survivable, unlike a lot of the 5-4 heroes. So probably either Colossus or Drax is probably my favorite 4 hand size hero right now, and Colossus right now, just because Cult of the New is edging it out. So when you flip up, you're going to get a tough card. You can get an additional tough card on top of that, and we're going to talk about why you would want so many tough cards with Colossus soon. When you flip down, you get to shuffle a Colossus card back into your deck. So what's his main hook? Like I said, tough. He is a tough guy. Like you can tell just from that painting picture that he's a pretty tough dude, just like me. So Colossus can have 2 tough cards, and he can use them as a resource. So we've talked about using damage as a resource. We've talked about using cards as a resource. We've talked about using threat and letting threat accumulate in schemes as a resource. So Colossus is another damage as a resource type of character, but now the damage isn't actually damage. It's like tough cards. So that tough card could soak an entire villain attack, which could be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 damage, or he can turn that tough card in for a lot of different abilities. So here we've got a few of them. We have Made of Rage, which is a hero interrupt. When you make a basic attack, discard a tough status card from your hero, you get +6 for that attack, and that attack gains overkill. So for 0 cost, when you flip up turn 1, just for 1 card, you can do an 8 damage overkill attack from your hero kit. That's pretty bonkers. I mean, you're going to lose your tough card, right? So you are giving something up, but it's well worth it. My favorite one actually is Steel Fist. So it's a 2-cost hero action attack superpower. Note lots of superpowers. I don't mention Deft Focus, but that's because in my mind it's just auto-included in Colossus's kit. So hero action attack. Deal 5 damage to an enemy. You may discard a tough status card from your hero. Stun and confuse that enemy. Stun and confuse that enemy. This is like Spider-Woman's pheromones, but with damage. That's outstanding. I don't know how else to explain it. There was a lot of internet debate, right? Because previously you had to pay everything in front of the arrow to get the things after the arrow. You still do. But they've put out a ruling recently about deal versus take and the way that rule works in cards. And we'll put out a short video about that here pretty soon, just so people are up to date on that. But basically, when you're told to deal damage to something, you have to attempt to do that damage. That damage can be mitigated, so maybe the villain only has 4 health left, or whatever enemy you're attacking. Or maybe there's a tough status card, or they have something that mitigates some of that damage. That's okay. If it said take 4 damage, that would be a different situation. I don't even know how they would word that, but basically with take, if something says after you take damage, you can trigger this ability, you have to physically take the damage and place damage tokens on your character. You can't just block it all with tough. So there's a difference between deal and take now in costs, but this one luckily is deal, so you just have to attempt to deal. So if the villain's tough, you can knock tough off, give him stunned and confused, and just say I flipped all of the conditions and it was awesome. So love Steel Fist. And then Organic Steel, that's the one that comes into hand on your setup ability. So it's a 2-cost upgrade with 2 uses. Hero response, after a tough status card is discarded from Colossus, exhaust this card and remove 1 steel counter from it to give Colossus a tough status card. So you can get those tough status cards back. I will say one of my play tips for Colossus is I've seen a lot of players try to play Organic Steel in that opening hand when you have 7 cards. And over 50% of the time I would say don't. I typically use that as a resource to get better setup cards in play, and then when I see that card later, I might shuffle it back in when I flip down, but I'll play it later once my engine is up and running. But to start with, especially with that 4-hand size, you want economy, not tough statuses, unless you're going for some sort of rush game, which is totally doable. All right, so your main hook is getting tough status cards, and then having this decision point of do I use it to block the villain's attack, or do I use it to punch the villain's face? All right, so let's see what we have here. Key cards for Colossus. All right, there's 4 cards here, but really two of them are key. Iron Will and Titanium Muscles are by far the best cards in Colossus' kit, and potentially the best cards in Marvel Champions, like synergized with a hero. These cards are amazing. So Iron Will is a superpower, again, deft focus. Just gotta deft focus it. Colossus gets +1 thwart. If this was a wave 1 or 2 hero, the card would end right there. But it doesn't. It keeps going. So hero response. After a tough status card is discarded from Colossus, draw 1 card. There's no limit. There's no exhaust. So if you have 2 tough status cards, and they both get discarded from Piercing, right? Piercing does discard both statuses. You draw 2 cards to replace them. Or if you turn a tough status card into a stunned and confused for Steel Fist, you also get the bonus of drawing a card, on top of fixing your weakest stat. This card is key. It helps you cycle your deck. It helps you get the good cards into your deck when you're flipping down. You're putting better cards into your deck, so card draw is really, really powerful. I cannot stress how important and amazing this card is. So if you have the choice to play this or Organic Steel, turn 1, I want you to say it with me. You're always going to play Iron Will. I'm willing you to do so. All right, on the flip side, we have another amazing upgrade. So if you have the choice of playing both of these, the answer is yes. Titanium Muscles, Colossus gets +1 attack. So now we have a 2 thwart, 3 attack, 3 defense hero. That's pretty amazing. Again, wave 1, this card would end here, but it doesn't. Hero resource, exhaust this card, generate a physical resource for each tough status card on Colossus. So that could be 0, right? If you're behind in the game and you're not able to maintain your toughs, this card isn't so good. But even if you're in a mediocre spot and you have 1 tough status, this card is really, really strong, right? I mean, 1 resource is great on top of something that gives you an attack. It could be 2 resources, which helps with all those resource matching things like dropkick and things that force you to pay all physical. That's amazing. And I really like how it's something different. We always complain about getting wild resource cards, just generic card draw that doesn't tie into the hero's kit, and both of these cards are completely synergistic with this kit. They wouldn't work well with anyone else, and they're amazing in their own right. So I really, really am just blown away with the resource generation of this kit. I'm not saying Colossus should be a 3-card hand size hero, but if he was a 3 hand size hero, he'd still probably be okay. He wouldn't be great like he is, but he'd be okay. All right, so I had to put other cards on there because I can't just talk about resource generation. The game is more than that, after all. So we have Armor Up. This card is truly unique. It's an alter ego interrupt. When the villain activates, change to hero form. So that's going to let you get 6 cards in your hand. You're going to get to flip into hero form to gain a tough, and then you can soak a villain's attack. You can defend for another player, because it's not just when the villain activates against you, and you avoid a scheme activation if it is the one against you. So there's no thwarting cards in Colossus's kit, just Iron Will to give him plus thwart, but this acts like a thwart because it's like a scheme cancellation. The one bummer thing about this is Piotr's Studio is his signature support. It's an alter ego action, discard cards from the top of your deck until you find a Colossus card and add that to your hand. So that works really well with his ability to flip down and shuffle a card in. It increases the chance that you're going to draw the card that you just shuffled in, and you won't get to use that if you use Armor Up in the villain phase. So you're going from a 6-card alter ego hand to a 5-card one by playing Armor Up, but you're avoiding a lot of threat or saving someone by taking an attack. If you had Piotr's Studio out there, you're giving up a 7-card alter ego hand size, so it's a little bit more painful, but those two cards offer a really interesting choice, which I like. Alright, so we went from key cards to great cards, so that tells you I'm having a hard time picking trap cards because there aren't any. So we've got 4 cards here. We've got Made of Rage. We already talked about that. So you remove a tough status when you perform an attack to get +6 attack and overkill. And overkill. Yeah, you read that right. Steel Fist is just, pheromones from Spider-Woman with damage, a little bit insano. Organic Steel lets you replace those tough status tokens, so this is really cool if you have Iron Will. You play Steel Fist to remove a tough status, you draw a card from Iron Will, you put a tough status back out with Organic Steel, and all those triggers still work out, which is awesome. And then Bulletproof Protector. This is actually like one of the hardest cards to master in Colossus' kit, in my opinion. So it's discard a tough status card from your hero to choose. Give your hero 2 tough status cards so you can double your tough status, or ready your hero. So you can use this with Iron Will to draw cards. You can use it to turn on Titanium Muscle's resource generation. You can use it when you need to remove a minion in a pinch. You're going to find with Colossus, he's very difficult to pilot because minions are going to just eat up those tough status if you don't take care of them. So this card it seems like it's kind of niche, and you're like, okay, well, cool, I get 2 tough instead of 1 tough. But really, it's like a super important card in his kit, and mastering when to play this and what choice to make is actually really, really vital to piloting Colossus super well. All right, and then there's other cards. So he does have a signature ally. It's Shadowcat. She's a 2/2/3 with the X-Men trait. I love when allies mirror their hero counterpart. So with Shadowcat, the Shadowcat hero ignores guard, patrol keywords, and crisis icons. So her ally does. That's cool. I don't have a major problem with it, but I really dislike when cards in a hero's kit just completely don't synergize with the hero. And this card does not help Colossus at all, other than the fact that he has a team-up card with her. I'd much rather her be a basic ally and me get an extra copy of Armor Up or something. It doesn't really help him. I mean, you don't want to ignore guard and patrol, because if you ignore guard and patrol, they're going to ping off your tough, which is bad. You really can't afford to leave schemes out. I mean, she's a 2-thwart ally. 2-thwart allies are good when you have no thwart cards, but she costs 3. So, I mean, she's not inefficient. She's not bad. She's just not something you're probably going to build your deck around. She's just there. So, she's an ally. Signature ally syndrome. Sorry, Kitty Pride. Alright, so hero overview. What are our weaknesses for Colossus? He has really tricky solo play. It's really hard to maintain those tough statuses, because since you have so many effects that trigger off of them, you need to keep them on your hero. So you can't afford to just take villain attacks with tough, but deciding when to do that is probably the most important thing you can do. You're really reliant on tough, which makes you reliant on chump blocking, right? If you don't want to lose that tough status yourself, you're going to have to get really high defense and defend, or you're going to have to chump with allies, or believe the new mythical ruling that came out recently that cards can interrupt tough statuses for some reason. I don't believe that yet. We'll talk about that later. He does have lots of setup, right? You want Iron Will, you want Titanium Muscles, you want Organic Steel, probably want a second Organic Steel. So you're looking at 8 cost worth of cards that you want to get into play, and he requires flipping, so there's lots of other maintenance you have to do, and he's kind of got lack of thwart power, but he's got that cool Armor Up card. His strengths are he's super unique. He's got that cool Armor Up card. He's big money. He doesn't seem like it. When people think of big money, they think of Carol Danvers. They're soon going to think of Cyclops, because Cyclops he does a really good Captain Marvel impression. I'm just going to say it. But Colossus is big money, right? If you get Iron Will and Titanium Muscles out and you lose 2 tough status cards, first you had 2 tough status cards, so you used them with Titanium Muscles as 2 resources. Then you lose 2 of them and you draw 2 cards to replace them. Those tough statuses just turned into 4 resources for you. And they also did a good thing, like triggering effects. So it's it's just he plays so well. It reminds me of Sandman from Sinister Motives. You probably have heard me rave about Sandman, my favorite villain ever, probably still after Mutant Genesis, because the design on Sandman is like the pinnacle of Marvel Champions so far. Every card that is in that kit like really belongs there, and that's almost that way with Colossus, and then there's Shadowcat. And he has really strong attacks, right? He does have titanium muscles, and he punches like he has titanium muscles. All right, so let's get into the aspect primer. This is my favorite part of Marvel Champions deck building and figuring out what cards make different heroes tinker or tweak or get excited. So there's a lot of theories out there that every hero kind of favors the same cards. And I don't think that's true. And I think hopefully Colossus is one of those heroes that has some different builds in each aspect that make people a little bit interested to play with him. He doesn't have hooks that are super strong into every aspect like some heroes do, but he's playable in all 4. All right, so in aggression, I put in cards like Wolverine and Team Strike and the upcoming Fastball Special, which I have proxied because, oh my goodness, I am excited for Wolverine. Well, actually, I'm excited for Fastball Special. I'm not so excited for Wolverine. I'm excited for Fastball Special. So Wolverine is a 4-cost ally with 3 attack that heals 1 after he attacks, and he gains piercing. You can use Wolverine with the new Team Strike aggression card from Mutant Genesis. Play only if you have the X-Men trait, exhaust your hero and any number of allies. Deal X damage amongst characters in play for each attack on those characters. So if you exhaust Wolverine and Colossus, you get to do 6 damage among minions and villains. That's really strong because you cannot afford to leave those minions up. Like I said, if you're soaking the villain's attack with a defense or dodging it somehow or with an ally, that minion attack is going to pop your tough off and ruin your day. So you cannot afford to leave minions out there. And Team Strike, once you're set up, can just sort of wipe the board of minions every turn. Fastball Special is very similar, so it's deal X damage to an enemy, where X is the total of attack of Colossus and Wolverine. This attack gains overkill and piercing, so it's going to be a 6 damage attack once you have your titanium muscles on, which we all agreed we're going to get Iron Will and titanium muscles out first turn every single time we play. I'm totally confident that that will never be at the bottom of my deck. Okay, some other cards that I include combat training, right? So in the hero's kit, you can get to 3. If you can get to 4 base attack, you're rocking and rolling with a lot of cool cards that ready you. So we're looking at Ready to Rumble and other fun things. I put in Dropkick because with those titanium muscles, that's the one, yeah, that generates resources, you can generate 2 of the 3 physical resources you need for Dropkick, and then an additional one. And you're stunning the villain, so you're not losing your tough statuses. Like, everything good comes from this. So we like to Dropkick. You could just paint that Hulk like shiny silver, and it'll look just like Colossus. I put in Surprise Attack. Colossus is a flipper. Despite the fact that he doesn't have a lot of thwart, he wants to flip and get that tough status every other turn and cycle those decks back in, those cards back in. So Surprise Attack, being able to flip and deal 4 to a minion, 3 to a minion, and wipe them out of the way, really important. And then Into the Fray. Into the Fray is probably the most important aggression card for Colossus to get rid of those minions, especially in solo. So hero attack, hero action attack, deal 6 damage to a minion. For each point of excess damage from this attack, remove 1 threat from the main scheme. So it shores up like your biggest silver bullet, and it shores up your biggest weakness, which is threat. So it's really, really strong for Colossus. All right, so for Justice, this is probably his best solo aspect, but his least exciting solo aspect, because nothing in Justice really synergizes with Colossus. And like a lot of solo, it's all about shoring up your weakness and not showing any weakness to anyone. All right, so here we've got cards like Concussive Blow. Again, we're going to use Titanium Muscles to do our resource matching. Lay Down the Law, just because we're flipping. If we get to flip and remove threat, that's going to make up for that flip down. Stealth Strike, I think, is great for handling minions and threat. So again, it's like Into the Fray, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Clear the Area, obvious good cards are obvious good cards still with good heroes. Heroic Intuition, you can get up to 3 thwart once you have Iron Will and Heroic Intuition out. It's a little bit of setup, but 3 thwart is a very strong value to have for your hero's base thwart. And then Sonic Rifle, right? You're a flipper, so anything you can do to confuse, like Concussive Blow and Sonic Rifle, it's only going to benefit you. I do have this fun little combo that I've been working with. So the X-Men get these training upgrades that you can play on X-Men allies, max 1 training per character. The Justice one is mission training. Attached ally gets +1 thwart and +2 hit points, but it requires you to have X-Men allies in play. So the one thing Colossus likes to do is draw cards. He's all about his Iron Will. He's all about cycling his deck really fast and then shuffling good cards back in when he flips down. So one deck I've been poking around with is using one way or another in Chance Encounter to get a side scheme out and then put this attachment on the side scheme so you can go fish out an X-Men ally, add them to your hand, get them into play, put mission training on them. If you get Blindfold or someone like that out, any X-Men ally that has 1 to 2 thwart and get a mission training on them, they can hold down thwarting for Colossus for 3 to 4 to 5 turns, which is enough to get your foot in the game and really seal it. So that's a fun little combo. It's a little bit risky, super card drawy, super fun, so I appreciate it. All right, leadership. So this was a hard one for me. It was hard to find like a fun Colossus leadership deck that's not just strength and numbers, but I have strength and numbers up there from the Captain America pack. Action, exhaust any number of allies you control. Draw a card for each ally exhausted this way. Okay, cool. Card draw is good. We get it. But there is a fun combo in leadership for Colossus. So obviously we can use the training for leadership, which is +1 thwart, +1 attack, and +1 hit point, Danger Room training. And we can even use Danger Room since we're flipping so much. We can flip down, play an X-Men, then you get to search your deck for that Danger Room training and put it onto them. One of my favorite cards to play with Colossus is Teamwork. So if you have Teamwork and Made of Rage in your hand, Made of Rage is when you make a basic attack, remove a tough status to get +6 attack and overkill for the attack. Teamwork is when you make a basic attack or thwart, exhaust an ally to add their stat. So if you can get to a 3, 4, 5 attack ally, you can use Teamwork and Made of Rage to do, I don't know, a 13, 14 damage overkill attack. And your ally doesn't take consequential damage, so they can sit out there for strength and numbers and just fuel your deck. So I've been playing this really dopey deck with like all the big chunks, right? We're talking the Goliaths, the Giant Mans, the Visions. You can really pump their attack stats up on. My favorite is Giant Man, though. So you get Giant Man out with an Honorary Avenger. He's now up to 5 attack with Inspired, 6 attack if you can get a Danger Room training on him. So Teamwork is now exhaust Giant Man to give Colossus +6 attack. Made of Rage is +6 and Overkill. You can get to a base of 3, so you're sitting at 15 attack with Overkill, just requiring 2 cards in your hand at the same time. And you've gotten like 5 or 6 cards out of your deck to thin your deck along the way. So it's pretty fun. It's a little dopey, but it's fun. All right, protection. This is the aspect he comes packaged with. So you'd think it would be his best aspect because you really want to protect your tough status cards. And maybe you can. We'll see. So let's talk about how we can get some tough status cards first. So I like cards like Perseverance, right? That comes in his kit or in Wasp. When you flip, get a tough card. So with Colossus, you'll get 2 because you'll get the 1 from his ability. Polaris, when she enters play, gives an X-Men character a tough status. That's probably going on Colossus. And Hard Knocks, again, 2 birds, 1 stone. Deal 4 damage to an enemy. If that enemy is defeated by this attack, give your hero a tough status. We love. So there was recently... Do I really want to talk about this? Okay. There was recently a ruling that may have changed the way we play the game Marvel Champions. Up until, I don't know, 7 days ago or something, we'll say. The tough status cards always took precedent over every other effect in the game. So you couldn't use Energy Barrier to block damage and keep tough on your character. Or you couldn't use anything that like prevented damage, like Sidestep. You could use your basic defense, right? When you do your basic defense, it's subtracted from the villain's attack. You calculate the difference, and that's the damage that tough would have to soak. But you couldn't put other preventions in front of a tough status card. The development team has since changed that, and now you can put that in front of tough. So they ruled that you could use Sidestep to preserve a tough status card. It remains to be seen if that ruling will stick, because there's a lot of cascading effects that go with it that we will not cover in this video, because I don't want to think about them, because they kind of give me nightmares. But, so we have this Energy Barrier and Jump Flip with question marks after them. If that ruling sticks, Energy Barrier and Jump Flip are like solid choices, right? Reduce damage and remove threat. Love. Save my tough status cards over time and deal damage. Love. So those are cards that could be very strong. Now, if the ruling doesn't stick and they reverse it and go back to the way the game has always been played before, until a week ago, then Energy Barrier can no longer save your Toughs. So if you have Tough, there's a very low chance you'll even be able to trigger Energy Barrier and Jump Flip. So then those are cards you do not want to include. So I'll always have this video updated with what the current ruling is, telling you what is more important on this slide. Right now, it's Energy Barrier and Jump Flip. Tomorrow, only time will tell. So, okay, I'm done. My soapbox is over. So other protection cards you can include that will always be helpful. Subject Hero Interrupt. When an enemy initiates an attack, the enemy gets -3 attack. So you can save other characters so you don't have to use your Tough status card. You can reduce the villain's attack so that you can avoid getting a Tough. Really, really good. And we've talked about minions, right? Lots of ways to get rid of minions, things like that. A lot of minions have 2 or less health, or 2 or less attack, right? So if you don't want to waste damage on minions, there's this amazing card called Pin Down, attached to a minion, max 1 per minion. The attached minion gets -2 attack. There's no like text to make you discard this card. I guess you could discard it from like Caught Off Guard, but this can just turn a lot of minions into, oh, don't do damage for the rest of the game. That's really strong for Colossus. Obviously, you can't do it with guard minions, right? But if you could just like have minions in front of you and ignore them, that's like really, really strong. So I'm in love with Pinned Down, and I love Rock Slide, who's in the art, so that helps out. All right, on to basic cards. So Avengers Mansion is still good, right? In a character that wants to draw cards and that can get big income, Avengers Mansion is going to help. Other cards that like are more specific to Colossus. So you can use Ready to Rumble, right? To ready, since you're flipping so much, you're going to flip into hero form a lot. What I found is like I don't take a lot of damage as Colossus, so I don't really have to recover, which means I'm very rarely exhausted and needing to ready with Ready to Rumble. So I mean, your mileage may vary. Maybe I'm playing wrong and you will take a lot of damage as Colossus, but for me, I find it almost hard to do so. But since you're flipping a lot, Professor X from Mutant Genesis is going to let you confuse the villain, and then he can soak an attack, and then you can flip down the next turn, so he buys you sort of 2 turns of villain activations. Unshakable is going to give you steady, since you have 14 printed hit points. Limitless Stamina is going to ready your hero, so if you get to 3, 4 attack, or 3 thwart, you can use that twice in a turn for very little cost, which is really good. And then X-Jet is just generic goodness for X-Men characters, so it's sort of like Quinn Carrier, except it can be used for any player whose identity has the X-Men trait, so you can even use it while an alter ego for another player, which is really nice because the X-Men are all about training and teamwork, as we have learned through their card releases. All right, so theme, Piotr or Peter, has been around since Giant Size X-Men #1 in 1975. That predates KennedyHawk. He's been a mainstay in the X-Men comics and the cartoon shows, and even in the movies off and on, with lots of heroic moments and awesome emotional beats. One of the all-time like shocking comic book moments to me is there was this virus that affected mutants only, this legacy virus. And in order to cure it, they made some MacGuffin that was basically a mutant had to like kill themselves or sacrifice themselves to release the like antibodies or I don't know pseudoscience to cure the disease. So Colossus does this to save his little sister Magic, who I believe is in Shadowcat or Cyclops' deck. I can't remember which one. I think it's Shadowcat's deck. So that was like a really emotional moment for me as a kid reading that. So I'll remember that one forever. Really good storyline ending, or at least emotional storyline ending. He's had a long time thing with Shadowcat. I wouldn't say it's a will they, won't they. It's more of a been like they are, and then one's dead, and then they are again, and then another one's dead, and then they are again, and they both die. And it happens over and over and over and over again. But he has connections to a lot of the X-Men that are out there. That giant size X-Men issue, that's like the Storm, Wolverine sort of team intro. So some of the X-Men that are coming out next month, he's going to have a really cool thematic synergy with. So I'm super excited for it. All right, we're finally back to it. The patented archery scale of Marvel Championsdom. This is going to tell you what I think about Colossus at this current snapshot in time. Obviously, aspect viability and some things can change as other cards are released, but this is the snapshot for when this video releases. So, we're going to look at power level, decision making, aspect viability, thematics, and fun factor. We're going to rate each one on a scale of 1 to 5. We're going to average them up, get a score. Power level 5. Colossus is strong. I know some people think he's not, probably because mainly solo play, but even in solo play, like, it's hard to be stronger than just not taking damage and avoiding scheme activations. And yeah, it takes some luck. Yeah, it takes some thinking. You got to play a little bit differently in solo, right? Because if you're not using tough for your Colossus effects, something else has to defeat the villain. But he's just strong. Like, getting tough every other turn is really, I can't describe it. It's just really good. All right. Decision making. I put him at a 3. I almost put him at a 4, but I sort of did all these X-Men videos in the same week and rated them against each other, and I have him at a 3. I do think there's some interesting decision making of when do you use your tough status for a Colossus effect versus avoiding damage. But I think the answer is almost made up for you, right? Do I have Iron Will and Titanium Muscles in play? If I have Iron Will in play, I don't mind losing a tough status because I draw a card. If I have Titanium Muscles in play, I don't want to discard a status because I want resources. And if I don't have a Colossus card in my hand to play, then I'm likely fine losing my tough status, flipping down, and getting one back the next turn. So, like, maybe it took me a while to break that algorithm for myself. And I'll review that again here in a second, just so everybody can write it down and memorize it in their little memory banks. So I make this decision with Colossus when the villain is performing an attack against me. Am I going to try to defend it? Am I going to block with an ally? What am I going to do? And if I have Iron Will in play, I'll probably soak the attack so I can lose a tough and draw a card off Iron Will. If I have Titanium Muscles in play and I need to use the resources, then I won't try to lose the tough status because I'd rather have the resources from Titanium Muscles. Or ideally, I have 2 and then I get a little bit of each. And if I don't have a Colossus card in my hand, right, one that is like Made of Rage or Steel Fist, then I'm probably okay losing the tough status, flipping down, and then being able to flip back up and reproduce that tough status, but have used it to save myself an exhaustion. So there is some decision making in there, but it feels very sequenced. It doesn't feel like a decision as much as a pattern. And that's a little bit different to me than decision making. All right, aspect viability. I have him at a 3. I think that in solo, I found you really have to focus on leadership and justice, which is a solo crutch for a lot of characters. Protection can work okay. Aggression can work in a rush deck, but like, he really, 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 really thrives in multiplayer for being able to play all 4 aspects. And that's a bit of a bummer for me. I like when I can play a character in all 4 aspects on all player counts so that they still have fun. So I have him at a 3, almost a 4. He's like a borderline. I'm not going to 0.5s. I can't change the scale after we've started at the beginning, but we're going through it. Thematics, I've got him at a solid 5. I can't think of a character, maybe Luke Cage, that could like handle this like mechanic better. The mechanic works perfectly. It does like mostly ignore his alter ego side, but I'm to the point in my Marvel Champions life where I've realized that alter ego sides are mostly going to be ignored. That's just, you're going to get an apartment, you're going to get a studio, maybe you're going to get a bedroom, and then you're going to get back in hero form and do some action. So that's just what it is. But I think they cover him solidly, right? He's doing good. Fun factor for me, he's a solid 5. Like I said, he's probably my second favorite of the 4 X-Men characters, and I would put Colossus and the other X-Men character that I really like probably in my top 5 heroes of all time. Now, he's not Hawkeye levels of fun. I hate to tell people he doesn't walk that edge in my life, but he's dang close. So I'm putting him at a 5. We average that out. We get 21 points divided by 5 categories. That's a solid 4.2, putting him really, really high compared to the core set heroes and Marvel Champions. So congratulations to Colossus. You are doing great. So thanks for watching this Hero Primer video. I'm super excited to be back. We're going to get that deck building series finished and kicked off as well, and a couple other fun videos. So sound off in the comments below. Let me know what your favorite Colossus deck is, or if I have posted one of your favorite decks, let that author know on marvelcdb, because they put a lot of time into those write-ups, and I really, really appreciate that they did that for me. Let me know what aspect you think pairs with Piotr best. Like, how do you enjoy playing this new hero? And what old cards are you most excited about using with Colossus? So that's it for the Colossus video. As always, we are Marvel Champions Monthly. We're going to be putting out our podcast feed every other week. We'll post that on YouTube as well, but also doing YouTube videos. You can check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, every once in a while on Twitter. I don't update that nearly enough. Or on Patreon at patreon.com/MC podcast, MCM podcast, something like that. It's in the little notes below. Either way, thanks for tuning in. Have a great day, and good luck playing some fun, tough games with Colossus.